You call that surrender? General Krell snarled, boots scraping against the Earth flag draped across the broken table. You come here with no army, no honor, and I'm expected to kneel? General Alara Voss didn't flinch. Not when the alien's obsidian armor gleamed beneath the flickering warlights. Not when the circling Varn soldiers began to laugh with sharp, inhuman voices. She stood, alone in that ruined negotiation chamber, spine straight as if her bones were made of tempered steel. I came to stop the bloodshed, she said softly. A whisper, really, but the kind that cuts sharper than blades. Then bleed first, Krell growled. The kick came like thunder. His plated leg snapped forward, and in an instant Alara's body slammed into the cold dirt floor. Her head struck stone. Pain bloomed behind her eyes, bright white, immediate. She did not cry out. She simply lay there, cheek pressed against soil still warm from old fire, as the alien general loomed above her like a storm made flesh. Show this footage to your leaders, he barked to his adjutant. Let them witness how Earth begs. The recording drone spun silently overhead, catching every angle. The dust in her hair, the silver of her crushed shoulder plate, the smear of blood trailing down her jaw. She tasted iron, and then silence. No voice came to her defense. No one moved to help her rise. Outside the tent, her own aide stood frozen in shock, eyes downcast. Her second-in-command, Commander Silas Wren, looked like stone, ashamed, helpless, paralyzed by politics. She rose anyway, slowly, deliberately, like a woman resurrecting herself. She turned without another word, the torn hem of her uniform dragging across the dirt as she walked past her own, past the alien jeers, past history rewriting itself in real time. Not one soldier followed. They called it disgrace. They called it surrender. They called it the death of Alara Voss. But death is louder than that. Death smells like ozone and screams. This was something quieter, a burial while still breathing. Hours passed. Evening lay down over the city ruins like a shroud. Firelight danced on shattered concrete. Alara's breath fogged in the air as she walked alone through Dust Sector 9, her steps unsteady but stubborn. Once this place had housed families, laughter and spices and song. Now, only the wind remembered their names. She found a half-standing structure with no roof and one surviving wall. Sat there in the silence, arms around her knees like a child who forgot how to be a general. Footsteps approached. She looked up. A girl stood at the edge of the shadows, no older than 20, wrapped in patched linen, eyes too old for her face. She held a tin bowl, trembling in her fingers. It's soup, she said. Alara blinked. I have no coin. The girl said nothing, just placed the bowl down gently and walked away back into the night. Alara stared at the gift. Steam curled upward, blending with the stars. She didn't eat it, just kept her hands wrapped around the warm metal until they stopped shaking. That night, she slept in a bunker with no door. The next morning, a report flickered to life on a battered screen. Human general humiliated, Earth in retreat. The footage had gone viral across interstellar networks. Some called her a traitor, others a coward. Even Earth's high command released a statement. General Voss acted without consultation and has been relieved of active duty. It was over. She stood barefoot in the rubble, letting the dust coat her skin like armor. Silas didn't come. None of her former officers did. No one offered explanation. The war went on without her. But the people didn't. Civilians remained trapped in the city, cornered between crumbling buildings and tightening alien patrols. The wounded had no med bays. Children cried, with voices too soft for the universe to hear. And still, she remained. She spent the next days moving quietly, pulling trapped elders from collapsed stairwells, bringing salvaged water filters to the hidden shelters. Never in uniform, never with orders, only with purpose. Some hissed when she passed. That's her, they'd whisper. The one who kneeled. She didn't answer. Once she spotted Silas from a distance, inspecting defense lines. He didn't wave, didn't speak, just turned his back. The loneliness settled into her bones like winter. She spent that night cleaning rust from an old field blade, its edge still sharp despite time. Her hands moved on memory alone. In the quiet, another figure stepped into the firelight, same girl from before. She knelt without speaking and pulled out a threadbare cloth. Began to wrap Alara's wrist, where bruises darkened skin like ink. "You don't have to," Alara murmured. The girl looked at her, eyes gentle, unblinking. "You did. That was all. And that was enough." The next day, she walked to the edge of the alien-occupied sector. Not as a general, as a ghost. She stood before the city's fallen statue of peace, its arms broken, head lolling toward the stars, and she stared at the horizon, where alien towers rose like thorns. And there, in the dirt, she whispered a promise to no one. "I'm not done." The world shifted. Behind her, lights flickered. A hum began beneath the ground. Something ancient awakened, deep beneath the city where forgotten war tech lay buried. Her war core had survived. Somewhere below the ash it stirred. And so did she. Her breath deepened. Her shoulders squared. Not with rage, but with something quieter. Something stronger. Conviction. The kind that does not shout but walks. The kind that returns fire not with noise, but with justice. And though the night remained silent, the city felt it. The fire had returned. The war core was buried beneath 30 years of rubble. But Alara remembered the layout of Dust Sector 9 like it was still breathing. It had once powered Earth's orbital cannons, silent now, buried like bones no one dared to mourn. At dawn, she pressed her hand to the half-buried console, dusted with ash and rust. The metal was cold at first, lifeless. Then it pulsed beneath her skin. Faint, a whisper. It remembered her. She had bled on this metal before, given it orders that changed tides. Her fingerprints were coated in the ghost memory of its circuitry. All it needed was a reason to awaken, and Alara had one. It wasn't revenge that moved her fingers across the old interface. It was precision, purpose. She spoke to it like an old friend who had waited in the dark. "I need you," she murmured. "Not for war, for justice." The system flickered. Screens blinked once, then again. A low thrum began to rise, deep and rhythmic, echoing through the broken bones of the city. She stayed with it for hours, rewiring, recalibrating, feeding it broken parts salvaged from old drone bays and half-melted comms panels. It began to purr like a sleeping animal that had once hunted stars. She only paused when Soraya arrived. No announcement, no greeting, just a soft clearing of the throat, and a pair of hands holding a stitched-up satchel of bread and water. Alara blinked at her. "You keep finding me." Soraya sat beside her, cross-legged on broken marble. "It's not hard. You don't hide very well." Silence settled between them, warm and taut. Soraya's presence was a quiet defiance of everything Alara had become. Disgraced, outcast, unworthy of loyalty. And yet the girl came. Not as a soldier, but as something far more dangerous, someone who still believed. Soraya didn't ask questions. She just watched the lights hum beneath Alara's fingertips. "Does it remember you?" she asked at last. Alara exhaled. "It remembers pain." Soraya didn't smile, but her voice softened. "So do people." Alara turned back to her work, but not before allowing herself the briefest glance at a girl with steady hands, sitting beside a ruin, offering bread to a ghost. By nightfall, the system was operational, but incomplete. It needed a power source, something stronger than the residual core buried underground. Something mobile, alive. The old orbital systems had relied on a neural sync conduit, a living interface. It had to be her. There was no one else left. She stood before the war core and opened the connection port on her armor's forearm, still bearing the burn marks from her final campaign. She hesitated only once, then locked the connection. Pain flared bright and clean. It lanced up her spine like lightning. The war core surged. Alara gasped and dropped to one knee. Her vision fractured. Memories not her own poured into her skull. Battles she had not fought. Screams in alien tongues. Stars dying with silent beauty. The system had absorbed every death it had ever touched. And now, so had she. She rose slowly, shaking. The cannon was alive again, but it would only fire once. One shot, one godlike strike. That was all she would need. The next morning, the town changed. She noticed it in the silences first, how whispers no longer followed her, how children no longer turned away. Someone had scrawled a message on the outer wall of the medical shelter. She stayed. It wasn't praise. It was truth. And truth spreads. Even Silas found her that afternoon. He arrived in plain clothes, a hood drawn low, but Alara recognized his gait before she saw his face. He stood on the opposite side of the room for several moments, the silence awkward and long. "I thought they'd kill you that day," he said finally. She didn't turn. They tried. He hesitated, then stepped forward. His face was more worn than she remembered. His hands, shaking slightly, pulled something from his coat, a small black cube, no bigger than a fist. "I never turned in your command codes." Alara looked down at the cube. It was encoded with her military identity. Access to Earth's forgotten weapons. Long locked away. "I should hate you," she said. Silas nodded. "You should." She took the cube without touching his hand. Their eyes met, just for a heartbeat. He left without another word. The cube fit into the war core like a missing soul. By dusk, the system was fully armed. And just in time, an alien broadcast crackled over the airwaves. Krelltak's voice, harsh and triumphant, echoed through every remaining receiver. "At dawn, we will purge the resistance. Let the city be cleansed. Let her be forgotten." He meant her. He always had. But Alara Voss was not a wound to be buried. She was the fire beneath the ash. She walked to the top of the ruined Capitol Tower that night, her breath misting in the cool air. Soraya followed silently, a blanket around her shoulders. "I thought it would hurt more," Alara said. "What?" "To be nothing." Soraya didn't speak, just leaned against her gently, shoulder to shoulder. "You were never nothing," she whispered. They stood like that for a long time, beneath the stars, two shapes against the night. And then the sky cracked open. Krelltak's ship had arrived. Monolithic, pulsing with blue fire, its underbelly glowing like the promise of 1,000 deaths. Troops began to descend in formation, their armor shining like obsidian storms. Alara watched them come, calm, focused, and then she whispered a single word to the war core embedded in her suit. "Now," the sky answered. A beam of pure, white energy tore from the earth, silent, sudden, divine. It pierced the ship through its heart. A pulse. Then nothing. The ship fell. No explosion. Just the slow, impossible descent of something once invincible crashing into the sea beyond the city walls. And the streets fell still. She turned to Soraya, whose eyes were wide, but calm. "He'll come now," Alara said. Soraya nodded. And far beyond the ruins, amidst rising ash, Krelltak stepped from his escape pod, breathing, bleeding, burning with rage. The final hunt had begun. "You," Krelltak rasped, stepping over molten debris, "were supposed to be broken." Alara Voss didn't speak. She stood alone in the ruined courtyard of the old capital, smoke winding between fractured columns and shattered statues. Dawn had barely crested, but the world already seemed lit by fire. Her armor, scorched and humming faintly with residual charge, clung to her frame like second skin. The war core pulsed dimly at her spine, a heartbeat borrowed from vengeance. Across from her, the alien general limped forward, dragging one foot through the rubble. One eye swollen shut, his shoulder plate cracked open, black blood dripping from his wrist in slow threads. And still, he carried his blade. "I offered you mercy," he growled, voice cracking with rage and disbelief. "No," Alara said, her voice even stripped bare of everything but clarity. "You offered me silence." And she had denied it. Above them, the city groaned with the weight of dying metal. The orbital blast had obliterated the flagship, but it had fractured the buildings too. Dust drifted through the air like ash from a funeral pyre. Somewhere behind her, civilians watched from behind shattered windows. Faces bruised by war, drawn to witness the end of something larger than a single life. This was not about command. This was not about pride. This was not even about war. This was about memory. Krelltak raised his blade. "You've no army, no command, no home." "I have purpose," Alara replied. He roared, charging. Their blades met with a sound like thunder compressed into metal. Sparks burst outward. She twisted, ducked, drove her elbow into his ribs, felt the crunch. He staggered, but struck back, the arc of his blade slicing her side. Blood bloomed through armor. Pain blurred her vision, but she welcomed it. Pain reminded her that she was not finished. They fought without elegance, only fury and intent. Each strike carved into the memory of betrayal. Each breath became defiance. And through it all, she saw his confusion grow. He had expected hate. Instead, he found stillness. She disarmed him with a pivot and a downward thrust. His blade skittered across stone and disappeared into the shadows. He lunged for it, but she kicked his leg out from beneath him. He collapsed, breath heaving, claws scrambling for footing. Alara placed her boot on his chest. Kreltak looked up, wild-eyed, teeth bared. "You won't kill me. You want to be better than me." She stared down at him, that familiar rage burning deep, but there was something else behind it now. A hollowness, not of weakness, but of discipline. "I don't want to be better than you," she said. "I want to be done with you." He spat blood. "Then finish it." For a moment, the world slowed. The city held its breath. Even the wind seemed to wait. But Alara did not kill him. Instead, she turned away. The silence that followed was louder than any blade. Behind her, Soraya stepped out from the shadows. She followed silently, as she always did, watching, not interfering. She knelt beside the broken alien general and placed a sensor beacon on his armor. Alara glanced back. "We'll let Earth's court decide," Soraya said quietly. "Let them witness what you did." Kreltak writhed, snarling. "You let me live out of pity?" "No," Soraya answered, her voice like snowfall. "We let you live out of justice." Alara looked around, at the burned ruins, the people gathering, the air shimmering with heat and quiet awe. Her enemies defeated, her dignity reclaimed. But more than that, something deeper had settled. Peace, perhaps. Not the kind signed by treaties, but the kind built brick by breath in the broken hearts of survivors. Silas appeared near the edge of the square. No soldiers, no entourage, just him. He met her eyes across the courtyard. This time he saluted. Alara did not return the gesture. Instead, she turned toward the civilian line. A young boy, no older than 10, stepped forward and held up something small, a tarnished pin. Her old insignia. He didn't say a word, just looked at her like she mattered. She took it. The people began to gather, not with cheers, but with presence. They didn't need speeches. They only needed to see her standing. And she stood tall. Later, when the lights softened and the ashes cooled, she found herself sitting beside Soraya beneath the old capital's skeletal archway. Their shoulders brushed gently. No words were needed. Soraya passed her a cup of cool broth. Alara accepted it without thanks, because between them, kindness needed no acknowledgement. For a moment, the war felt like it had existed in another life. Alara leaned back, watching birds begin to return to the half-dead trees. Life was creeping in through the cracks. The smallest, bravest rebellion. Was it worth it? Soraya asked, voice low. Alara took a slow sip, letting the silence linger. "Yes," she whispered, "because I didn't win by becoming what they feared. I won by remembering who I was." And in the sky, far beyond the smoke, stars began to shine again. A breeze stirred her hair. She closed her eyes. Then, with the quiet grace of someone who had once lost everything and chose to rise anyway, Alara whispered, "Not to Soraya, not to the city, but to you, the silent listener of stories long after they've ended. Remember this, dignity isn't given. It's reclaimed, inch by inch, breath by breath. So if the world forgets your name, say it back to the dust. And rise,